Hello and welcome to the Rotoworld Baseball Show. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined today, filling in for Scott Pianowski, by my Tuesday Fantasy Baseball Q&A co-host, James Schiano. James, how you doing?
Doing great. Ready to talk about some baseball in the week that's been filled with football.
Yes, we got to keep baseball in the conversation, So just as a reminder up at the top, if you are still deep into your fantasy baseball content at this point in the year, every Tuesday, 1 o'clock, YouTube, NBC Sports YouTube, James and I are taking all your questions. We will tweet out the link. You can find it on our Twitters. James is at James_Schiano. I am at Samski NYC. Listen to this podcast. Hit us up next Tuesday. We'll take any and all of your specific league questions so we can help you win a championship. And that's what we're trying to do here, James. We're trying to get people to rise up the standings, capture those titles. So we're going to be pivoting to look at some, as you called it, lightning in a bottle guys who either are currently on some hot streaks or are in situations where they could get hot very quickly. And then also looking at some schedules over the next couple of weeks. I know you in particular really kind of are a fan of digging into schedules at this time of year to try to find competitive advantages.
Yeah, totally. Because this time of year, it's like you can't really rank players anymore because everyone is going to have, beginning of the year, everyone's playing almost the exact same teams, just depending on your division. And that as you get this time of year, it really shrinks down, like who your pitchers will be facing, how many more starts they're going to have, who's playing against the White Sox. Like those are all things that are monumentally important these last 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and James and I mentioned this on the Fantasy Baseball Q&A yesterday, so I'll just say it out at the top too. Like the idea of rest of season kind of goes out the window now, right? Like if you're not going to use a pitcher for the next 2 or 3 weeks, it doesn't matter what you think about him, quote unquote, rest of season. What are the guys that can help you in the immediate? And then if you need to pivot to somebody else 2 weeks after that, you pivot to somebody else 2 weeks after that. Obviously, you will have guys who you're not going to cut from your roster, right? We all know that. But the bottom half of your roster, the guys that you're like trying to find, diamonds in the rough or waiver wire gems or whatever, you're no longer thinking rest of season. You're thinking, can they help me for the next week or two? And then can I find somebody that can help me for the next week or two? And then can I find somebody that can help me for the next week or two? And you do that dance until the end of the year.
Yes, and you can't even hold these players close to your heart if they're not performing or if the schedule doesn't line up. Like we talked briefly offline about Garrett Crochet and the fact that it's hard right now for a guy who's only facing 15, 16, 18 batters a game. How many wins can you get me? How many strikeouts will that get me? Like you just have to cut out the player and just focus on who's playing as much as possible and when they are doing it.
Yeah, and you will see a lot more injuries pop up, especially as teams are out of it. Guys get dinged up a little bit, and maybe they decide not to play through something, for the last 3 weeks of the season. Unfortunately, the news item we're going to lead with at the top is not about a team that's out of the playoff race, but it is a major injury happened over the weekend, and then we got news at the beginning of this week that Austin Riley was out for the remainder of the regular season, 6 to 8 weeks with that fractured hand. Initially, the Braves said they were going to look at options internally to replace him. It took about 1 game, and they decided they weren't going to do that anymore. So they went and signed Gio Urshela. So my 2-part question at the top of this is just like, I know you're a Mets fan, so you may want to say the Braves can't withstand this, but realistically, can the Braves withstand this? I mean, no Albies, no Riley, no Acuna. And then side question for that, for fantasy, is like, does Gio Urshela matter to you now?
Urshela mattered some just because he's someone who's been a bat-to-ball guy for years now. He's going back 4 seasons. He's about a 280 hitter, 275 hitter, which in this modern baseball batting average landscape can help in a short period of time. But this Braves offense is not an offense that we want to be buying into this time of year either. They've lost almost every single starting regular from opening day to this point right now with Riley going down. But I think Olsen and Harris being the only ones who've both had poor seasons of their own. Harris just coming off the IL last week. So Urshela is more of a miracle dart throw. I need help at corner infield. I need batting average. And can the Braves make the playoffs? It's really just a who's going to be less bad off between them and the Mets, because the Diamondbacks and Padres have pulled ahead pretty handedly. Each of them have 3 games over that last spot. And the only team that's in range is the San Francisco Giants, who are playing well and have an awesome rotation. But if you look at the Giants' schedule, they still have 6 games left against each of the Diamondbacks or the Padres. So if they play well enough to get in, that just muddies the whole picture again. So maybe they can jump in, but it's hard for them to just jump the Braves and the Mets. Unless, I mean, the Mets have been trending downward. The Braves have no players left. Maybe they just play poorly enough where the Giants are a little over 500 the rest of the way and sneak in. But I don't know. Braves rotation is the best position group between them and the Mets at period. So I can't, I don't know. It's hard. I want the Mets to catch them. I'm praying for the Mets to catch them, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah, and you still have Matt Olson, you still have Marcell Ozuna, you still have Michael Harris. Like, these are not, I mean, it's not the lineup we thought we were going to get from the Braves, but it is still, there's talent in the lineup, which is why, to your point, Gio Urshela still makes some sense in deeper fantasy leagues because we know he has been able to hit for a solid batting average. I think of him a little bit as like the third base or corner infield version of Orlando Arcia. Like, you were rostering Orlando Arcia because he was in the Braves lineup, and he was going to hit for a decent average. And so the counting stats would be solid for like a deeper league middle infield target. And I kind of think you do the same with Urshela in a deeper league corner infield target. The batting average will probably be fine. That will help the counting stats. He is in a better park for power than he was before, but he's not going to be a huge power guy. And he's not really going to run. But that still has value. You know, if you were somebody who was like, chasing the Jonah Brides of the world on waivers this weekend, right? That Urshela could join that mix.
Yeah, easily. He probably is. That lineup is still better than the Marlins, to use that example again. Yes. But it's something that I wouldn't bank on him if you're in a 12 or a 10 team league. But if you're in a 15, you need some at bats, go get him.
Yeah. And you mentioned, the Braves rotation. We also have to talk about, we thought Reynaldo Lopez may have been done for the year because he has a history of injuries. And then we had the forearm tightness and everybody was like, oh, here it comes. And he missed 3 weeks and he made one rehab start. And then it was like, oh, he's facing the Phillies. So obviously we can't start him against the Phillies. And then he just lit up the Phillies yesterday. Are you fully back in on like Reynaldo Lopez should be treated the same way we were treating him 6 weeks ago?
Completely back. He had the highest average fastball velocity in any start this year. He hit 98 in the radar gun, which I believe is the first time he did that too. 10 strikeouts in 5 innings, toe-to-toe Zach Wheeler, made it look easy. Full strength Phillies lineup. I'm as excited about Reynaldo Lopez as I would have been a month ago, and a little frustrated that I dropped him in far too many places.
My God. I did too. Yeah. I dropped him in a few, like even 15, 12 team leagues where I was holding guys like Yamamoto or Jared Jones. And I was like, I can't have too many guys on the IL. This like NFBC formats where you don't have an IL spot. And I dropped him, and now I was scrambling to pick him up, but not aggressively because, again, I thought I'd have another week because of the Phillies start. I didn't get him anywhere.
18 swings and misses and 47 swings. It was a very dominant outing.
It's great. I was able to get a couple shares of two other guys who came off the IL. Max Muncy and Tommy Edman came off the IL on Monday for the Dodgers. And so my question to you is, in what leagues are you interested in Max Muncy and Tommy Edman now that they seem like they're going to be everyday regulars in a pretty good Dodgers lineup?
Muncy, every single one of them. That doesn't matter. I want Muncy everywhere right now. He hit a huge home run yesterday. I believe it was still off Bryce Miller when the Dodgers are starting their comeback. And then Edman, the only one is just probably not certain tens, but I think both of these guys you can bank on very consistent playing time, which is really important. Edman is 2 games back with the Dodgers. The first game he played center field, and the second game he played shortstop. And each of those games he made a sparkling defensive play.
That played shortstop yesterday. It was absurd.
Edman, yeah, it was amazing. And like that's the reason they have him here. So I know when you're a fantasy manager, you're going to acquire this player for the counting stats they'll put up at the plate, but you can't put up those stats unless the team values you somewhat defensively. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Edman's here in these 2 days with the team, they basically said, you are the best defender on the team. We're going to put you in every position possible to help us win every single day. That's really relevant. He's going to be in there every day. Muncy just looks totally like he does. He's going to hit for power. Anytime a righty's on the mound, he's going to crush them. The home run yesterday, again, sparked the whole team. 107 miles an hour, 410 feet. The only problem with him right now, but I think this will change, is that he was down to 7th in the lineup. So I assume he winds up working his way back up to that 5th spot where Gavin Lux has made his home over the last few weeks. Even though Lux did hit the home run last night too, but as long as those tides will turn as they always do, and I think both of these guys could be huge pieces in these next few weeks.
Yeah, it seems they want to keep Will Smith sixth, even with his struggles, because they just want to break up the lefties, Lux and Muncy. And so Muncy and Lux could flip flop. I mentioned, Edman. I have a few places you're going to get speed on top of the counting stats hitting in that lineup. It seems like obviously the quote unquote losers here from a playing time perspective. Miguel Rojas no longer everyday at bats. Kevin Kiermaier. It seems like if Edman plays center field, Rojas will be in the lineup. And if Edman plays shortstop, Kiermaier will be in the lineup.
Yeah.
And it just kind of depends what the Dodgers want to do there. Jason Hayward now looks like a bench bat. Kike Hernandez now looks like he'll only play against lefties. And Andy Pages, who was on a lot of rosters for a long time this year, got sent down to the minors. And, joins a long list of like rookie hitters who flashed intriguing potential, who were fine, but not great over the full course of the fantasy season. We haven't had those full breakouts. So I think Pages can be safely dropped everywhere in redraft formats. I don't anticipate him coming back up.
No, and even Hayward hit the big home run that won them the game last night. They had three different players play center field in that game, which is shocking. That's so Dodgers.
Yeah, it is wild. We should also mention Evan Phillips, because listen, the Dodgers have saves in 3 games in a row. They had a save in their win on Sunday, they had a save in their win on Monday, they had a save in their win on Tuesday, and they were all from 3 different pitchers. It was Michael Kopech on Sunday, it was Evan Phillips on Monday, it was Daniel Hudson on Tuesday. The Dodgers mentioned that Kopech was a little gassed. He was throwing a lot for them since coming over. Evan Phillips had thrown 2 days in a row on yesterday, so that's probably why they went to Daniel Hudson. But Evan Phillips has righted the ship a little bit over the last few weeks in August. He's cut out the cutter and has gone pretty much just 4-seamer sweeper, and the results have been a lot better. I'm inclined to believe that they would like to go back to him as the closer and maybe still mix and match. They can still use Kopech here and there, but to alleviate some of the burden. But I've seen Evan Phillips dropped in a few leagues because he was not pitching well at all. And I think he is back in at least a share of the closer duty in Los Angeles.
I agree with you. And I think that the Dodgers are not going to put themselves in a box with this closer role. And it seems like, I think the game on Sunday gives us a little bit of insight, because these games against the Mariners were 3-run games, which is still high leverage, but less high leverage. That's only more of high leverage because the save literally you can earn in a 3-run game. But the 1-run game on Sunday, I thought it was interesting that they went Phillips, Hudson, Kopech. And I think out of all, Phillips actually I thought was the one that may have looked the best in that game. That was right the first time I saw him. I was like, okay, things have changed here again. I can't remember which part of the order that was up against, but it just seems like they have these 3 guys in various fireman roles that they're going to play in various situations against various matchups. And it's not going to be fun forecasting who gets the saves, but you'll probably be able to get a handful from each of them.
Yeah, and again, on a team as good as the Dodgers, we'll talk about some other closing situations in a second, but like rostering all 3 of these guys over some people who are the quote-unquote closer does make some sense, given the amount of saves that you could get in LA. We should also talk about something that I added to the rundown late, but you had mentioned Garrett Crochet, and I thought it was relevant to talk about the news out of Detroit early Monday morning, but after the game on Sunday, where they mentioned that Tarik Skubal's start over the weekend could very well be his last start this year on normal rest. They don't seem to want to do what the White Sox are doing with Crochet and have Skubal pitch on a normal schedule, but only throw like 4 innings. They seem to want him to get on the mound and just pitch and not worry about, how many pitches and what he's doing. But they're going to give him extra days in between starts, or they're going to skip starts. So there could be weeks, especially if you're in like a head-to-head format and the Tigers get 6 games that week. It could be a week where Skubal doesn't have a start at all. So I'm curious how you're responding to this news if you have Tarik Skubal. I don't think you can cut him, but it makes it harder to trust him. In a roto league, I think you just keep him in there and you look at the schedule and you hope he's starting. But in head-to-head, like you kind of have to plan. I think you need to have an extra starter on the off chance that you get a playoff week and Skubal doesn't have a start for you.
Totally. And Skubal hasn't thrown more than 120 innings since 2021. And he's had a litany of injuries since then. He's already blown past that number this year. And fantasy manager, that's frustrating. As the proud owner of a Logan Gilbert Cy Young ticket, I'm very encouraged by this all. But I wrote this up on Rotoworld last month, a little over a month ago, about all pitchers that could possibly have an innings limit. And it didn't seem like it at the time, but it was very likely for Skubal, Skeens, Crochet. It just seemed like it had to happen because of where these guys were compared to where they'd been. And Skubal's actually spoken about this. I heard Sears talk about it on Rates and Barrels that Skubal's basically said he doesn't think time off will help. It's basically I have to either pitch on regular rest but shorter, or just be shut down entirely, which is a situation that I think the Pirates might be weighing with Skeens as well.
Skeens,
yeah. And it's just, it stinks. You just have to wait and see. You can't drop them. A lot of leagues playing won't even allow you to drop these guys yet, which is kind of funny and ironic. But there's no good way to go about this really as a fantasy manager. It's just wait and see, and we're at the mercy of every little tiny piece of tidbit of news you could possibly get.
And we saw when the Cubs lengthened the rest days for Imanaga, it was disastrous. I mean, that was part of his rough stretch, was him getting more time off. And so, yeah, it is an ongoing trend that baseball teams are trying to figure out how to properly manage innings without impacting the rhythm of the pitcher.
And maybe that's what the Braves had in mind with Reynaldo Lopez. He hadn't surpassed 100 innings since 2019. So maybe there was with him, there probably was a real injury, but it was just, maybe there's more merit in taking 4 weeks off and then revamping as you can, instead of I'm going to start every other start and then try to keep any kind of semblance of consistency. It seems difficult from standpoint.
It's the Pirates and Jared Jones too. I mean, again, Jared Jones has been on the IL for a month, but when he comes back, conceivably, he's just going to start the rest of the way.
And he was lights out in his rehab appearance yesterday.
Yes.
The fastball velocity was back. All the movement was back. Slider looked lethal. So maybe, again, every single team has a different way of handling this. I don't think anyone actually knows what to do, but it's not fun for us to try and figure out what they're actually doing.
Yeah. Well, it is like what we used to call Dodgeritis, right? Dodger pitchers would land on the IL for a month or 6 weeks at a time because they had so many starters. Now they're just all hurt or not performing well. But yes, we've seen that in the past. We're going to try to run through the rest of these quickly so we can get to the rest of these news and notes quickly so we can get to a lot of the meat of the content here. However, Zach Eflin landed on the IL with shoulder inflammation. I'm just curious if you're taking any chances on Cade Povich, who is will likely get another shot in the rotation. We saw a different pitch mix from him in his last outing, and it was against the Red Sox. And even though he didn't get the win, he looked much better. And I'm curious if you have interest in Cade Povich now that he seems like he's going to be in the rotation for the next, 3 weeks, month, maybe.
Yeah. I still don't really. He's made the change to throw more fastballs, and I don't like his fastball very much. So I'm just not. The only thing I like about Cade Povich is that defense behind him in that ballpark he can pitch in. He's not someone that I'm going to go out and go after right now.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I mean, I had thought when he came up that it was a little bit of hey, he has a lot of pitches, and he could be a little bit of a kitchen sink guy in that sense. He threw the changeup a lot more against the Red Sox. Those are things that could be handedness wise, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it also seemed like he ditched the cutter. He didn't throw the cutter at all in the start against the Red Sox. He had thrown 13 cutters in the start before against the Blue Jays, 17 cutters in the start before that against the Yankees. So ditching the cutter and then upping the sweeper and upping the changeup, that may not be such a bad thing because the cutter was a fine but not great pitch. But again, I think you're looking at it's rearranging deck chairs a little bit. It makes him slightly better, but I don't think it drastically changes his outlook. No,
the guy, and I have him highlighted later on, who I like in this rotation with the opportunity, is Albert Suarez. We'll talk about that when we get there.
We will, yes. More closer news is that Pete Fairbanks landed on the IL with a lat strain that's very likely out for the rest of the season. The Rays are not really contending, and a lat strain in a pitcher is going to take a few weeks, and then he has to ramp back up. We kind of got our answer on, or at least for now, we got our answer on what the Rays are willing to do in the back end of the bullpen. Last night, Edwin Uceta got the save. He was pitching really high leverage innings before. He got a win on Sunday. Are you interested in Uceta as a reliever if you're looking for saves on the wire?
Yes, a lot. Very interested. It's amazing that everything can crumble around the Rays in the season, but like clockwork, they will still pull three relievers out of nowhere to look like some of the best in the league. Everyone, you said this, since June 1st, has the best strikeout minus walk rate for any reliever in baseball and the lowest SIERA, any reliever in the whole league. His changeup has the best run value per 100 pitches of any changeup in the league. The Rays lowered his arm slot ever so slightly, which allowed that changeup to get a lot more run out to the arm side way, and it's just he's been lethal. He's unbelievable. And if he's going to get the saves, and the Rays have kind of flipped in the last few years where they were always the kings of closers by committee, but now they haven't been. Maybe that was just a Peter Fairbanks thing, but he's gotten the lion's share of saves. So if there's a world where you said it gets the lion's share of saves, he becomes someone that can drastically change the standings in the league.
Yeah, he has a 0.90 ERA on the year in 30 innings. He's got 36 strikeouts and just 4 walks in those 30 innings. Tremendous free agent signing in the offseason by the Rays from the Chicago Cubs, which is the last team that he was on, even though he did pitch 3 innings for the Mets last year. But he ended the season with the Cubs, and the Cubs could probably use him out of the bullpen. They DFA'd Hector Neris, and it seemed like Jorge Polanco was going to get the closer role. I mean, we talked about this on the Q&A yesterday, but then last night they had a save opportunity and it went to Porter Hodge. And Lopez hadn't pitched since Saturday, so it wasn't a rest thing. So it'll be interesting to see how they split this up. But if are you picking up both of these guys? Are you only picking up Hodge? Where are you going here for the Cubs bullpen?
Definitely depends on your level of desperation, which will be the next bullpen too. It's like, how much do you need 3 saves in the next 10 days? Like if you need them, like if they can really change everything, you have to try and get one and hope it's better. Hodge got the most recent chance. Hodge throws a little bit harder. Lopez has had an actually decent year besides for his tirade to the field in May, but I don't know. It's like you flip the coin and then make the ad and figure it out.
Yeah. I had some cheap shares of Lopez that I got after he got a save over the weekend. And listen, in the second half, I mean, he was really good. He had 14 scoreless appearances for the Cubs until he gave up that solo home run in his save opportunity. I don't think this is just going to be Hodge. I do think they'll mix and match a little bit. So I'm happy to put small bids on both of them and see if I can steal a save or two. But I don't think necessarily, even though I know that Hodge got the last save, I don't necessarily think it's him. As like him and only him. I think both guys are worthy of your attention. I'm not sure anybody is worthy of our attention in the next bullpen. The Rockies had a save opportunity last night. That was my game to blurb. And I was looking at the save opportunity, and all of a sudden I saw somebody named Angel Savili, who I didn't know, get the save. And I thought, what is happening? And I found out after the game, the Rockies beat writers asked Bud Black, and Victor Vodnik is shelled for a couple of days with shoulder soreness. They're going to give him some rest, and then in a few days, they're going to have the trainers kind of like training staff check on him again and see where we go from here. So we know Vodnik is probably sidelined for the rest of the week, and then maybe more. You've got Savili, you've got Tyler Kinley, you've got Justin Lawrence. Are you interested in any of these guys for saves in Colorado, or are you just ignoring this whole situation?
Definitely not. And I'm going to excuse myself from the Rockies closer discussion because last time I was on here with Scott 2 weeks ago, I was hyping up Victor Vodnik. I love Victor Vodnik as a prospect. I saw him live at the Arizona Fall League in 2021. I had watched him save a couple of games with the Rockies that I covered, and I was like, this is a guy to go after. This is not like the other Rockies closers. And that night, he gave up 3 earned runs to the Mets in a loss. So I'm not going to go for anyone. I'm not going to support anyone. I'm going to fully take myself out of this whole conversation.
That's probably bittersweet for you because you're like, "Ooh, I recommended him and he got lit up at the Mets."
The Mets won,
there's always that. Yeah. Jeimer Candelario also landed on the IL. The Rays shouldn't have even been playing that game in the rain, but they did, and he got hit in the foot and he fractured his toe. And there's no timeline yet for his return. There's a chance it could be the rest of the season just because the Reds aren't really contending. And if he's got a fractured toe and it keeps him out 3 weeks and there's only 5 weeks left, like we just don't know how long they're going to push him. It seems like what's going to happen right now, you're going to get Ty France at first base. You're going to get Jonathan India at DH. And then that's going to open up more at bats at second base for either Santiago Espinal or Ahmed Rosario, who they just picked up off waivers for the Dodgers. I guess between like France, Espinal, Rosario, are you interested in any of these guys, given the fact that, they have a pretty strong home park to hit in?
Just the home park, maybe Rosario chips in some steals, but I don't think this is a group to be any kind of excited about. Just the fact that there's almost no way to get Noel Marte off the field now. So maybe he can do something for a few weeks here.
Yeah, who knows? I think Ty France is firmly in that Gio Urshela, hey, I need a corner infielder in a 15-team league conversation. We knew in the offseason, like, oh, he went to Driveline and he, all this kind of stuff, but the power wasn't there. But listen, hitting 268 in 16 games in August with 3 home runs, there's not a lot of counting stats behind it, but he is starting to lift the ball more since he's gone to the Reds, which is important given that stadium. If he's going to lift the ball more and hit 260, 270, he'll run into a couple home runs when he's got like, a slate of home games coming up. And so I think he's a name to keep on your radar in deeper formats if you need a corner infielder. And Ahmed Rosario, I would be interested in if he became the full-time second baseman, because we've seen decent power speed out of him. But we need to see how that plays out. And it might just be Espinal, given what we've seen from him in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing, then we'll get to quick hitters. The Cardinals sent down Jordan Walker after just calling him back up again. They called him up to be a platoon bat, and they sent him down. Are they ruining his career? Like, what is happening here?
It seems like it. I mean, the Cardinals have a long history of outfielders flourishing elsewhere, and it seems like this will be another situation where that happens.
Excuse me, not just outfielders, because Paul DeYoung has 21 home runs this year. That's more than anybody on the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, and Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt have had their primes have ended. So it's just there's some bad vibes there, bad energy, bad juju. Very happy they're not going to back their way into the playoffs because I despise that organization.
Ooh, that's bold words. I'd listen. I'd love to see Jordan Walker get a shot somewhere else.
Anywhere.
I think sometimes, like, I don't even know that they were wrong for sending him down when he struggled. I personally believe that he did not deserve to be sent down early in the season. But I just think at some point, like, as a player, you kind of sour on the way you're being treated by an organization, and you likely aren't as open to the suggestions or criticism or whatever of that organization. And it might just require a fresh start for everybody. But the fact that they wanted Luken Baker to be a bench bat instead of, Jordan Walker, sure, fine, whatever. I mean, it just give him, free him, send him somewhere else.
Anywhere, please.
Anywhere. Quick hitters. I'm going to run through all of these. At the end, you can jump in and just highlight anything that you think is relevant or deserves extra attention. Ketel Marte landed on the IL with that sprained ankle. Kevin Newman is filling in as the regular second baseman for the Diamondbacks, and Geraldo Perdomo is getting some extra opportunities to hit at the top of the lineup. So that could be interesting for him if you have Perdomo for his run totals. Hassan Kim landed on the IL. They said that it probably shouldn't be more than the 10 days, and Tyler Wade has been starting at shortstop since then. You're probably not really adding Wade anywhere except if you're in an NL-only format, but expect it to be short. Thairo Estrada is back from the IL for the Giants. Nolan Jones is back for the IL from the Rockies. Byron Buxton has been ramping up his on-field activity and could be potentially activated this weekend, but they're going to check back in later in the week to see how he's doing. Brooks Lee on the Twins should start a rehab assignment any day now based on his work he did with the training staff. Both Rangers Suarez and Justin Verlander will be back in their respective rotations this week. So you can get them back in your lineups. Luis Gil had a back injury last night, which led to his poor performance against the Guardians. But the Yankees are calling him day-to-day and don't seem very worried about him missing a start. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Tyler Mahle landed on the IL with shoulder fatigue. John Gray is back from the IL, so they kind of just swapped spots in the Rangers rotation. Hunter Harvey remains shut down and actually received a cortisone injection, so he's no closer to returning, which means Lucas Erceg has a good shot to remain the closer on the Royals for the remainder of the season. He likely wouldn't have given up the job because he's been pitching so well, but there doesn't seem to be any immediate concern about Harvey coming back. Johnny Cueto is having his contract selected by the Angels, so Johnny Cueto will remain in Major League Baseball. Important to remember that in order for the Angels to maintain another year of control over Reed Detmers, they have to keep him in the minors until August 25th. So that date could be exactly why you're seeing Johnny Cueto and not Reed Detmers up in the Major League rotation. So keep an eye on Detmers, because after that August 25th date, he could be up in the rotation, and he could be somebody that could be useful for you in the final month of the season. And lastly, the Giants put Patrick Bailey on the IL, and they are apparently sniffing around Elias Diaz, who the Rockies cut after deciding not to trade him and then just releasing him and getting nothing for him. So Diaz could be an answer for the Giants for the end of the season.
Angels and Rockies, that's a who's who of how to handle a trade deadline. This Angel season could have only ended with all their former first-round picks in that lineup with Johnny Cueto on the mound. Frustrated by how the Diamondbacks have handled the Ketel Marte situation. He's someone who was pacing for an MVP, and now he might miss multiple weeks at the end of his regular season, which is painful. Nolan Jones, Byron Buxton, kind of excited. Why not, right? And Ursig, this is just, I'll leave you with this before we get into the meat here. If this season ends the way it's been going for the last month, how many closers are drafted before him in 2025?
I think that the steadfast, right? The standbys. Your Edwin Diaz's and your Clases and your, Helsley's and all those guys at the top.
Yeah.
But I think he joins the tier this year that was like Paul Sewald and Robert Suarez, and where you're like, okay, these guys should be the closer. If he struggles, the team could decide to replace him, but we feel like that was probably the 9, 10, 11, 12 range heading into drafts.
It's just
so maybe that's where we see Lucas Ursig.
He's been so good. It's crazy how good he's been. He if he put by March, if he ends exactly like this, I would love to see him push all the way up to just behind those top level elite guys, because it's been that good for a month now.
Yeah, he has been great. And we'll talk about, if you added him, it was lightning in a bottle. And we'll talk about that in our next segment. But before we do that, I do have to just point out it is fantasy football draft season. And this Thursday, we're hosting our annual Rotoworld Draft Marathon, which includes the unveiling of Matthew Berry's Ride or Die on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's right, 10 hours of nonstop draft prep beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern on August 22nd. That includes a bunch of live mock drafts that we do and record. I was in a few of them, talk through all the drafts and our ideas behind the picks and our strategies and all that kind of stuff. So you should check out nbcsports.com/draft marathon for the full schedule. Again, that's Thursday starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That's enough fantasy football. Love fantasy football. We do fantasy football here. Make sure you check it out. Also, this time of year, make sure you're just looking at the Rotoworld blurbs, right? We get them, baseball news, football news, all of that, but any and all training, you're going to get from those blurbs. So lightning in a bottle, James, this was a little bit of your idea. Talk to us about what we're hoping to give the people in this segment.
We want to just give you guys a couple names. I have 6 hitters and probably a couple more in my head, and 5 pitchers and 6 pitchers here who they can get hot and they can swing something. And they might not be guys who've had the best seasons. Oftentimes they're not guys that have had the best seasons. Sometimes they're guys who look good of late. Sometimes they're guys who have not even looked good of late, but they just have the propensity. They have something inside of them to go ballistic for 5 weeks. They can hit you 7 home runs and steal 10 bags. They could hit 350. They could drive in 15 runs and score 15 runs. There's some kind of way for all these things to come together, and they can be a lightning rod, lightning in a bottle for your team to get stats that you desperately need.
Boom. Love it. We're going to start with the guy who's already provided the lightning. It's Diamondbacks catcher, Adrian Del Castillo. Listen, I have to, friend of the podcast, Chris Clegg, who runs Dynasty Dugout.
Chris,
I have to give a big hat tip to him, because I did a Mining the Minors column about a month ago where I looked at the minor league and just said, okay, who is hitting really well in the minors and what is the likelihood they could help your fantasy teams this year? I saw Del Castillo. I saw his 24 home runs. I saw his, his ridiculous OPS that was over 1,000 because it came with a 403 on base percentage and a 608 slug percentage. And I saw Chris's article on Del Castillo, and he talked about how he thought the power was legitimate. There were clear gains in plate discipline in the minor leagues this year, cut the strikeout rate, swinging strike rate was sub 10%. And Chris said Del Castillo could be a DH at the big league level to end this year. It just so happened Gabriel Moreno got hurt, and Del Castillo has become the catcher. And he absolutely should have been picked up in 2 catcher leagues already. I have him in my waiver wire column every Sunday, and he is firmly working his way onto the 1 catcher league radar if you don't have like one of those top studs.
Yeah, Del Castillo, this is what we're talking about for lightning in a bottle. 9 games since his call up. And I doubt anyone got him specifically at the second he was called up, unless you're in the deepest of deep NL only leagues with rolling ad drops. But 3 homers and 14 RBIs in 9 games, hitting in the middle of a Diamondbacks lineup that is scalding hot, even without Christian Walker and Ketel Marte still. It's everything you need at the end of a season like this to do something drastic in your standings. And he's done it because of those play decimal gains, still striking out 30% of the time, but walking enough to mitigate that. And it's just, it might go cold in 10 days, 14 days, 21 days, but right now he is crushing the ball, ripping the cover off it. And at the catcher position, everyone could use that.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, depending on your league types, his roster rates will vary, but it's just 13% in Yahoo. Yahoo doesn't really do 2 catchers most of the time. So it's shallower formats, but he's widely available and should certainly be worth claiming. You're going to have to talk me into Nolan Jones. I know he's back. I know he plays in Coors. And I guess maybe that's what we're thinking is like he's back and he plays in Coors. And so we got to give it a shot.
The same reason no one wanted to give Nolan Jones a shot last year is the same reason why no one does this year. He's someone who's not often hit the ball. He's just more of an athlete than a baseball player sometimes. But if he gets hot again, like he did last year, and last year was much more pronounced. Last year was about 8-9 weeks of him being like a 40-40 guy if he played the full season. But it's just, he's healthy. He's in Coors. He's going to play every day. We've seen him do this before. We've seen him go on these hot streaks. He's not been able to sustain this year. There's been some injuries after a very bad start, but this is just like, it's Hail Mary time. Like sometimes you just got to take a shot, and he still is going to get on base. He doesn't expand the strike zone as much as someone who doesn't have very good plate discipline in general. He's already hit the ball 112 miles an hour this year, as bad as he's played. It's just get out there. Just put him on there if you can afford the roster spot.
Yeah, and he has fallen to 47% rostered in Yahoo formats. So there is certainly viability. People got fed up and they dropped him. And you talked about this on the Q&A yesterday, but with the Rockies in general, you need to look at schedule. When are they home? When are they not? Jones is somebody you could bench if you wanted when they were not playing at home. But, when they have long home stretches, he is certainly worth a gamble.
Yep.
Luke Raley is somebody who has been seeming at times like losing favor in the Mariners lineup. He hasn't been in all the time, but he's playing more regularly. We know he's got power, 15 homers, 9 steals on the season. Just 2 homers over the last 10 games, but he's hitting 292 over that stretch. And again, that power speed upside in a decent lineup, he has the ability to help you in all 5 categories.
Yeah, Raley has found his way into the lineup more against first baseman because Justin Turner has come to his team and not hit. Ty France is no longer there. Tyler Locklear is back in the majors. And Raley is just the quintessential lightning in the bottle guy because he's known for these prodigious hot streaks. And just seeing last 14 games, 4 homers, 426 OBP. When he's in the Mariners lineup, he is hitting usually in the top 5. He hit 4th last night. He was taken out of the game when a lefty came in, but he was 0 for 1 with 2 walks and a run scored, keeping that, again, OBP very high. And the thing I like to look at with these lightning in a bottle type hitters is seeing if there's any changes in their zone contact rate. Because I'm not looking for changes in skill this time of year. I'm just simply looking for heat. And I find heat by being guys who are simply hitting the ball more often when the pitches are in the zone. And you could do this really well on the Fangraphs graphs. Baseball Savant also lets you do that if you go to a player's their page and then their graph and just seeing how much contact you're making in the zone on each pitch, or you can simplify that for just all pitches in general. Raley's making more contact in the zone. When he's making contact in the zone, he's a better player because he still gets his walks. He still takes lots of pitches and he's selective. So he's someone, the Mariners team, that is desperate for offense. If anybody's hitting the ball, they'll be in that lineup, and he's a big one for that.
Yeah. Awesome stuff there. I've had him in the past, and we know that he can kind of, like, as he's mentioned, go on these hot streaks. We've seen a tremendous hot streak from Masataka Yoshida, who's not as readily available, 69% rostered, but that's because he has been on fire Since you have his stats since July 1st. He has been on the Yahoo Player Rater. He is the 34th ranked player over the last month in 25 games. The last 25 games, hitting .363, 5 home runs, 17 runs, 20 RBIs. Red Sox lineup is getting healthy with Casas and Tyler O'Neill back. And so, Yoshida, he's available. Absolutely worth adding.
Yeah, 950 OPS since July 1st would put him up with some of the best players in baseball. The only frustrating thing is that now with Casas back, he got himself up to 2-3 in the order regularly. Now he's moved back down. But if he keeps hitting like this Red Sox lineup has kind of hit a groove lately as well. They can't hold the lead. I don't have to tell you that. If they have one, they give it up almost instantaneously, but they're hitting. And as long as they're hitting and Yoshida's putting the bat in the ball as much and he's out there every day, like he will help you a lot in batting average and counting stats. Yeah,
last night they held the lead. Got a bunch of scoreless innings from their bullpen. They held that lead. Phenomenal. They much needed. Luis Garcia, and this is Luis Garcia Jr. of the Washington Nationals, not any of the other Luis Garcias, including the much maligned Luis Garcia of the Red Sox, who has struggled since coming over. Luis Garcia was somebody, we've been hyping up on the waiver columns since the start of the year. I think people forget that he's as young as he is because he debuted so early. He was like 20 years old, I think, when he first came up. And we kind of assumed he is who he is. Years old. And we're in the midst of a little bit of a breakout on the year. He's hitting .294 with 14 homers, 19 steals. He's gone a little cold in the last, but over the course of the month, his production is good. And we've seen, 7 steals in the last 25 games. The Nationals want to run. We've seen him be able to, put up solid aggressively, and that could help you in a lot of leagues. If he's still on the wire, he is rostered in 70% of leagues, so he's more of a shallower format's ad. Yeah,
this is probably more of your 10-team, 12-team guy trying to catch lightning in a bottle. But again, similar to a lot of guys on this list, he has a history and a past of having these scalding hot streaks that will kind of be stuck in between these streaks of being cold or just being league average. And it's truly gains. The fact that he's looking at a 2020 season is amazing. He plays great defense. He's a lefty, and this is a lineup that isn't that bad, especially with James Wood now at the top of it. CJ Abrams had a pretty horrible second half, but he's still finding ways to get on base. It's just his ducks on the pond for Garcia. He's hitting for power. He's hitting for average. He plays good defense in the lineup every single day. He's someone who just, you could look up in the end of the season and be like, wow, Luis Garcia wound up with 23 home runs and 28 steals. That is fantasy baseball MVP.
Yeah. It's wild. I've had him in a few places and been happy with it all year long. And so, if you're in one of those shallower leagues where he's available, go for it. And let's see. Ramon Laureano. I don't know why that was so hard to say for me. Been playing every day for the Braves. We do have Jorge Soler coming back. He claims Friday. We'll see how that goes. He says Friday. Are you concerned about Laureano losing playing time when Soler is back? Because the DH spot, we know who it is. It's Ozuna. He doesn't do anything else.
No. There is definitely some fear there, especially now with Harris returning. That was the spot that Laureano was occupying. But Jarred Kelenic has been so bad going on about a month and a half, 2 months now, that I know the righty-lefty situation will likely keep him in the lineup, but the Braves, it's dire straits. It's do anything we can to put runs on the board, win games, and get to the playoffs. So if Laureano is drastically outplaying Kelenic, which I wouldn't say he's drastically outplaying it, but I think he's outplaying him right now. I think they'll go based on merit to end the season. And Laureano is someone who's hit enough. He's not stealing bases in his last hot month, but there's power there. There's a modicum of plate discipline, which he's never really been great with, but there's some of it. And if there's the opportunity there, he's just one of those guys who it snaps and it goes.
Yeah, I have been bought in on him for longer than I should.
Yeah, it's way too long.
He was in my AL Tout Wars team this year. I just thought, we're going to get it back. But now, of course, he's going to get it back with the Braves because that's what happens. I'm sure you appreciated the James McCann homer against the Mets the other day because
I was sitting under it in left field when that happened. I sunk. I didn't speak to my dad or my friend for about 3 innings. I put my head. I couldn't believe it.
That's what happens. I know you said you had a few other names you wanted to rattle off. Who are some other names that people should consider for some lightning in a bottle ads?
I thought Buxton was a big one as he comes off the IL. He's someone that is just, again, similarly, if this just start playing and do it. I see that Gleyber Torres has still kind of been dropped in a few places. That's my toxic traits. I still weirdly would like to believe in him, but it's just now you're looking at like a 2-month sample where he's been better than league average. So it's just if there's a hot streak in there, he's been hitting leadoff a little more again, like he has earlier in the season. Jesse Winker on the Mets is another guy who they keep playing him every day. He's been bad since the trade deadline, but he has a clear opportunity in this lineup. Now they're getting a little crowded with Starling Marte back, and they've been making a lot of adjustments in game between games. So between Marte, Winker, and Bather, there's been a lot of moving parts, but he's someone who it can just snap and it can just happen. And then last one is Nolan Gorman. He hasn't had a good year at all, but there's always these are just the guys who, like, if it clicks, it clicks. And I want to have them on my roster in case there's a click.
Yeah, I love all of those calls. I should mention you had initially had Carlos Santana on here. Yeah. Carlos Santana is the 24th ranked hitter in Fangraphs Player Rater over the last 2 weeks. He had a really hot streak at the start of the summer as well, so we've seen him kind of do this before. David Peralta is hitting really well for the Padres and playing every day. And we've seen Peralta be a guy who can sport a pretty solid batting average while chipping in with some power. So he's somebody in deeper formats with an outfielder that I like. If you need catchers in deeper formats, Ryan Jeffers was scorching hot to start the year, went ice cold. He has 4 home runs in his last 30 plate appearances, hitting 276 over that stretch. We've seen, few catchers have his raw power. So if you're looking for that kind of raw power, Ryan Jeffers is somebody as well. And then there's another catcher, weirdly, but we're going to talk about him in the last section when we get to schedules, because he's on the Pirates, and he's playing pretty much every day, and he's been one of their best hitters of late. We're going to talk about some pitchers real quick who are lightning in a bottle pitchers. Listen, I have been pounding the table for Ryan Nelson for a while now, talking about also how he should not be taken out of the rotation. He appears as though he is going to get a start. Actually, it said he was going to, I read that he was going to get a start. And
apparently they've been switched.
And now they switched it out. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
That's
so, yeah. But keep an eye on Ryan Nelson because he was going to get a start, and then they took him out of the rotation. But he made an adjustment to go super fastball heavy and has just been otherworldly in his last 8 starts. 2.82 ERA, 0.90 WHIP, 27% strikeout rate. Like, he has been the best pitcher in that rotation. It's ridiculous that he's out of the rotation. And if Jordan Montgomery gets lit up by the Marlins today and they decide to put Ryan Nelson back in, like, make sure he's added in all of your leagues.
Yeah, just he's been so good that an eye has to be kept on him, despite the fact that the Diamondbacks have 5 right now. But Gallen's been bad. Merrill Kelly's been uneven since coming back. Eduardo Rodriguez finally has first good start of the year on Tuesday, but that was also against the Marlins, so it doesn't even really count. So there's some hope. Their schedule is not easy down the stretch. It's actually quite hard, one of the hardest in the league. But there's something here. There's something that Nelson's too good to not get another shot the rest of the year. And if he does get another shot, probably one that will not be given up.
Yeah. Definitely keep an eye on him. Also keep an eye on JP Sears. And you can learn far more about JP Sears if you read my Mixing It Up article, which came out this morning on NBC Sports, where I go over pitch mix changes for pitchers who are in the middle of hot streaks. I also included, we'll get to the next guy there because I forgot you put him on the rundown too. But JP Sears has been really, really good of late. He made a clear change to not only go to the fastball more, but elevate the fastball way more. That has helped increase the swing and strike rate. He has really kind of gone away from the sweeper against righties. He is using the sweeper still 25% of the time against lefties, but it was not really an impactful pitch for him against righties. Obviously, he's a left-handed pitcher, so that makes some sense. So he's gone far more fastball changeup, and the results have been really good over the last few starts. I understand he's faced the Giants twice, the Blue Jays, and the White Sox, but also there are changes that back up the success. And so I believe in JP Sears as like a really strong streaming target in good matchups the rest of the way.
Yeah, and big thing about Sears is that he's completed 7 innings in 4 straight starts and 6 innings in 5, and you wouldn't know it, but the A's are over 500 in the second half. So if you pitch weirdly, and their bullpen's not even that bad anymore. I got a first-hand look at it last week when they played the Mets. Ferguson's fine, Otanis is pretty good, and Mason Miller is back closing games. So you can complete 7 innings with an offense that's not horrible right now, and a team that finds a way to win some games. Like, you got a good shot here.
You do. You got a good shot also with the next guy who is also in that article. That's Bowden Francis, who moved back into the starting rotation for the Blue Jays after Yusei Kikuchi was traded at the deadline. And clear pitch mix changes for him. He kind of dropped the curveball that he was throwing regularly. He still uses it sometimes for called strikes, but is way more splitter heavy, and has gone to like a fastball slider versus righties and a fastball splitter versus lefties. He's deepened the arsenal. He's increased some strikeouts, and I don't know that he is like I have to roster him, but you should definitely be rostering him for a start against the Angels. And I think he is now firmly on the streaming radar for the rest of the season.
Firmly. I even think close to the top of it. He's just 22-1 strikeout walk ratio in 3 starts with the fastball he has. A favorite, I think, of a lot of people in draft season as one of these late round flyers. And now make a little adjustment. You have an opportunity and things can just skyrocket from there. And it looks like they are.
Yeah. If you want to read, here in detail about what those pitch mix changes were, again, go to the Mixing It Up article, which you can find on NBC Sports, or I tweeted it out. So check my Twitter account for that. I want to give you some space to talk about your guy. You teased him at the start of the episode, Albert Suarez. Why are you in on Albert Suarez to end the year?
Biggest reason I'm in Albert Suarez for sure is opportunity for a team like the Orioles with Grayson Rodriguez, Zach Eflin now sadly going down. Albert Suarez has tons of runway in this rotation to pitch well. They've stretched him out to 100 pitches very often, but as opposed to beginning of the year when he was more of a 2-time around the rotation guy. He mixes 4 pitches, at least 3 against each side of the plate, and that all starts with a fastball for him that's largely dominant, at least flashes dominance. He had to start against the Red Sox on Sunday, where he threw the fastball 60 times in 99 pitches. The Red Sox swung at 29 of them. They whiffed 11 times. They only put 10 in play, and only one of those 10 in play were hit over 95 miles an hour. And that's one of the hotter lineups in baseball, as he was throwing at just 95 miles an hour at the top of the zone. But it's got pretty decent IVB, at least when he's kind of, sometimes it oscillates in game, which is something he's tried to mitigate, but he keeps getting a little stronger and he keeps pitching deeper. So he's someone that is going to be in every 5th day for one of the best lineups and one of the best ballparks in baseball, and someone that should squarely be on anyone's radar. It's also a fun cheat code for certain leagues where you get the starting pitcher, relief pitcher eligibility, and you can sneak in an extra start in a spot of a reliever. So I love him for that. And I also just think that when you have a fastball that misses this many bats and doesn't give up this much hard contact, it's so easy to build a repertoire off it. And Suarez has done that with his changeup, curveball, and cutter.
And that is why I agree with you. We both prefer Suarez to Povich in that rotation because of that one clear swing and miss pitch, which Povich doesn't really have. There are clear swing and miss pitches for the next 2 guys, both on the same team. But Zebby Matthews and David Festa appear to be getting shots in the Twins rotation with all the injuries they've had. We've kind of been blurbing both those guys regularly. Zebby Matthews last week was in my Mixing It Up article where I broke down his pitch mix, and David Festa was in there a few weeks back. I am a sucker for swing and misses. I'm a sucker for that strikeout upside. So I lean Festa here of the 2 because I do think Festa with that slider has like a little bit more of a wipeout pitch. Zebby Matthews reminds me a little bit of Spencer Schwellenbach in the way of like, it's a young pitcher learning how to pitch in the big league level, has a deep arsenal of 5 pitches that he can go to regularly, really good location, really good command in general. So there could be strikeout upside through the mix of like decent stuff and plus location. It might take some time for him to learn how to maximize that in terms of, pitch sequencing and pitch locations against big league hitters, which happened with Schwellenbach, where the first few starts were not really great. And he learns kind of how to use his rotation and the depth of his arsenal and the depth of his arsenal against big league pitchers. And I think that Zebby Matthews is one of those type of arms where like, you're not going to watch him and be like, oh damn, he is filthy, but he's going to have strong starts more often than not because the stuff is good and the location is elite.
Yeah, I think Zebby is learning that quickly. He had his first really good start and a poor one against the Padres where he didn't miss very many bats. And I think that he might be figuring out that he probably has to lean more on a curveball that grades really well in the stuff models, but he hasn't shown a willingness to throw very often. And maybe that happens now, maybe it happens later, but both of these guys, again, are stuff plays. Festus definitely has more strikeout upside. I think Zebby, just because of the command, has more upside for wins to pitch deeper into games. It's been a month and a half now for Festa, and we haven't gotten that elusive 6th inning yet, but Twins are a great team. good chances for wins for both of them. Probably like slightly more for Zebby, but K's from both. And I think that with the injury to Joe Ryan and the lack of news on Chris Paddock, both of them are going to get a nice run this rotation.
Yeah. Lack of news on Chris Paddock. I think we have as much news on Chris Paddock as we need, but yes, lack of news so far on his injury. We're going to end by talking about some schedules that we should attack for both hitters and pitchers. But before we do that, just a quick note that the Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the Rotoworld Draft Guide plus fantasy DFS and betting tools to help you dominate all season long. You can use promo code ROTO10. That's the number 10, ROTO10, for 10% off. Go to fantasylife.com/RotoWorld to learn more. So we looked through some of the schedules. You highlighted some of the schedules for both hitters and pitchers that we thought were worth attacking. The Yankees will play Colorado this weekend. Then they get 3 games against Washington next week. They get 3 games against the Cardinals the week after. The question is, though, do the Yankees have hitters besides Judge and Soto that we want to kind of load up on? Are you advocating for stashing Jason Dominguez? Do you think that because Alex Verdugo is hitting leadoff, people should roster him? Are you buying in on Oswaldo Cabrera or Oswald Peraza? Like, who would you actually be looking to add in the Yankees lineup?
Yeah, this is just a who's who of bad pitchers the Yankees will be going up against. The next 10 games are scheduled against Kyle Freeland, Austin Gomber, Mitchell Parker, Patrick Corbin, Kyle Gibson. Like, these are guys to attack. But like you said, maybe you're in a 10-team league and Gleyber Torres just hanging out on the waiver wire and you could take a shot there. Maybe you're in a 15 and you say, Alex Verdugo, please score 4 runs for me this weekend. But they're a hard offense to stream with because they're poor. The Peraza and Cabrera conversations get a little interesting because there's a rumor that's floating now that Anthony Volpe may be sent down. Maybe you can zig on that zag if Volpe was dropped in your league. May pick him up and hope that against these quasi AAA pitchers in the majors, he can find a way to just hit them with some home games, and that's something that can happen there.
I will say, actually, just in peeking, on Sunday and on Tuesday, the Yankees faced a lefty, and Oswald Peraza started at third base over Oswaldo Cabrera. This weekend, the Yankees will get Kyle Freeland on Friday, lefty. They'll get Austin Gomber on Sunday, lefty. Next week, they'll get Mitchell Parker, Patrick Corbin, and Mackenzie Gore, all lefties. So that could be Oswald Peraza starting 5 of the next 6 games for the Yankees at third base. Short-term ad then in deeper formats to take advantage of that.
That could also be enough of a reason for Dominguez. Is Dominguez a switcher or left?
He's a left.
Okay, so never mind. I was going to say him over Verdugo, but that does not make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Oh no, I'm totally wrong. Dominguez is switch. That's
okay.
True.
Yeah, so those matches could be enough of a reason for them to be like, all right, this is time. We can't have Verdugo playing against all these lefties for 2 weeks. This is the moment.
Yeah, that would be nice to see because it is certainly time. It's long been past time. I told you I was going to tease a Pirates player before. It's Joey Bart. Joey Bart has been just incredible for the Pirates, so much so that he is getting some DH starts. In August, in 15 games in August, he's hitting .305 with 5 homers, 11 runs, 12 RBIs. You're saying the Pirates schedule is is a schedule that we should want to attack. And so, yeah, Joey Bart, come on down.
Bart, it just looks like the quintessential post-type breakout right now. Jeez. But as bad as this Pirates team has played, the next couple of games are against Reds, the Cubs, the Guardians who have bad rotation, the Cubs again, the Nationals, the Marlins. Those are pitchers not to be feared, any of those rotations, especially now with Hunter Green going down. So there's just, if you can get these guys in, especially that there's that nice, that's all home. I thought that was a road series in Cincinnati. It's 4 games at home against the Reds. But nevertheless, Bart looks like a real player right now. Tellez, he still plays for some reason. Yeah, I guess he does. Sad about the Brian Hayes news, that herniated disc he's been playing through, but there's always an opportunity against these bad pitchers to just go after it in August, September here lineup. Like, even that's not very good like the Pirates.
Yeah, it looks like 2 out of 3 against the Cubs and 2 out of 3 against the Reds are right-handed pitchers, so you'll get Rowdy Tellez in the lineup on those games. And then again, if you're in deeper formats, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa has been playing regularly and leading off for the Pirates. So in deeper formats, if you wanted to attack that with IKF, that could be a name. The Diamondbacks have a good schedule. In terms of waiver wire guys, I think we talked about them before. It's, Del Castillo, Perdomo, Kevin Newman. You're trying to attack Diamondbacks hitters. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jake McCarthy has been everything we could have ever imagined.
God, so good.
One of the best players in baseball right now, kind of locking in their hot streak. Also, Corbin Carroll, very secretly, has fully come back around from the shoulder injury. These are not hitters that are likely available, but someone like Lourdes Gurriel's probably could be on your wire. He's been hitting really well as this lineup keeps being good. Josh Bell up and down. Eugenio Suarez has gone cold again after being hot, but I see this nice weekend series if you're in a daily league against the Red Sox in Fenway, and that's the one I would like to go after. Home series against the Mets. The Mets, as fun as they've been the last few months, their starting rotation is poor. It's one of the worst in baseball in terms of stuff plus. Then home series against Dodgers, good pitching there, but I don't think their starters are really one to fear at this point in time. That's a 10-game span right there where you're like, okay, let's attack some of these pitchers.
Yeah, and Suarez, you talked about, has gone cold a little bit, but the counting stats have still been good in August. Yeah. He hits near the middle of that lineup. It takes one swing of the bat for him to give you decent fantasy production, and so he's somebody, if he's going to play regularly with a strong lineup. I was advocating for Eugenio Suarez at the beginning of the summer because I said, hey, listen, he gets hot in the second half every year. It's just what he does. And he did it again. And listen, he doesn't stay hot, but I think you're going to get another good couple of weeks out of him at some point, late August or September or whatever. Last lineup. I know there might not be a lot of guys here, but the White Sox have a pretty good schedule, as you pointed out, over the next stretch. And I will say that Andrew Vaughn has been hitting well of late. He's hitting 293 in August, 1 home run, 9 runs scored, 4 RBIs. Also, Gavin Sheets hitting 347 in 15 games in August with 8 RBIs. I know Andrew Benintendi went on that ridiculous hot streak for a stretch, but I can't buy it. I refuse to buy it. But I feel like, listen, if you need corner infield in deeper formats, Vaughn and Sheets could be short-term ads with the schedule coming up.
Yeah, again, this is a watch out for the Mets because the Mets rotation is poor. They're going to be facing Peterson and Quintana, which Vaughn's a righty. Yeah, Vaughn's a righty, correct? Yes,
yeah, so that helps Vaughn more than Sheets.
Yeah, it does. And then the Tigers, the Rangers, there's not very good rotations. These are home games for them. Whole big homestand coming up for the White Sox. Probably put 9 people in those stands, but it's just opportunities for exactly those 2 guys to hit. Because I don't think anyone else in this lineup is worthy of a moment there.
But those 9 people, they may see some wins, and that's important.
Maybe not.
Maybe we'll get some wins from some of these pitchers. We got some pitching schedules to try to attack. Obviously, unfortunately, the first schedule that's really good is for the Tigers. And the Tigers rotation after Tarik Skubal, and we talked about already what's going to happen with Tarik Skubal. It is Brian Sammons, Kenta Maeda, a human being named Brant Herder, and Ketel Marte. I don't know where you go here other than Tarik Skubal. I think the only one of these pitchers who has been even decent has been Sammons, even though you're not really getting any strikeouts. But if you were trying to get something passing, like decent ratios, and maybe trying to steal a win against like the White Sox coming up, he seems like he might be the only option.
Ketel Marte is the guy I wanted to highlight here. Okay. I think he's going to stay in this rotation. I don't think the stuff is really good by any means, but he throws a fastball 95 miles an hour, which sometimes that you just have to hope that's enough, and a slider that is good, and a curveball that is fine. And his next 5 starts against the White Sox, against the Angels, in San Diego, stay away from that one, against the A's, and then against the Rockies, as scheduled right now, if that doesn't change. So 4 out of those next 5 starts are against 4 of the worst teams in baseball. That A's start, I talked about how they've been playing better. That's still in Oakland, where it's not an easy place to hit. So if you just want to be a little sneaky, you want to try and do something, thread a needle with a pitcher that might get blown up in one of those games, but you could still get 3 wins out of it. Ketel Marte has a ridiculously easy schedule coming up.
I love that. That is actually a really great call, and I'm sure he's widely available in most formats.
Yeah.
The Rangers are interesting because a lot of the Rangers rotation is available on the waiver wire. Dane Dunning is now back in the rotation, probably available on your wire. Cody Bradford has been picked up in a few places, but was under 50% rostered last I checked. Same with Andrew Heaney. We mentioned that John Gray is coming back off the rotation, out of the off the IL. Sorry, he threw 27 pitches out of the bullpen on Tuesday, but he should slot into the rotation now that Tyler Mahle is on the IL, and we could see some September Jacob deGrom. So where are you going here with this Rangers schedule?
Cody Bradford is the player I wanted to highlight because I think that not this similar to Kyler Montero. There is some stuff here to be excited about. There are some strikeouts. There's no walks whatsoever, which I love because Cody Bradford is a bit of a fly ball pitcher. He's a lot of fastballs, changeups. Now he's mixing in the curveball, which is really good for him. That's kind of changed his outlook this year. And here are his next starts to end the season here. White Sox, A's, Angels, Mariners, Blue Jays, A's, Angels. If he stays on the same 5-day schedule, that's how he ends the season. That is someone that could be, truthfully, with even a slightly above league average stuff, one of the best pitchers of baseball over 5 weeks against those 5 teams. That's just he has to be in every roster. You can never leave him on a waiver wire right now with that schedule.
Boom. You heard it here, people. Cody Bradford, priority ad in all of your leagues right now. Attack that schedule. Attack it. And then the Cubs. And there are a few guys on the Cubs. I have been a fan of Jameson Taillon this year. I added Javier Assad in a few places this week because even though he hasn't been pitching deep into games, which is a problem, the starts were pretty good for him this week. There are, you have guys like Justin Steele is rostered everywhere. Imanaga is rostered everywhere. I don't know that I can get behind Kyle Hendricks yet, but there are some options for the Cubs.
Yeah, the Cubs, this is a weird schedule one because it happens fast and it changes fast, where their next 15 games are Tigers, Marlins, Pirates, Nationals, Pirates. And then it goes Yankees, Dodgers, Coors Field. So it's going to end soon, but for these couple of weeks, Javier Assad, Jameson Taillon, exactly like what you just said. Find them, stream them, and get some easy wins.
Yeah. And we'll talk about, what you do with stuff like that. I don't know if it pertains to like Justin Steele or Shota Imanaga, but like you mentioned, if you have a really good pitcher on your team or you have a solid pitcher on your team has been good for you all year and their final 2 starts are Dodgers at Coors, like you could drop that pitcher. And we'll obviously cross that bridge when we get to it toward the end of the season. But that's really why you want to keep an eye on schedule is the name value doesn't matter once you get to a certain extent. Obviously, Chris Sale, you're pitching in those type of games because he's been so good for you. But there's always a barometer, a level for a hitter and a pitcher where you're like, listen, I know this guy has been good for me, but like, I'm not, taking Tanner Houck and starting him the final 2 starts against the Dodgers and in Coors. And if that means I have to cut him, those are the decisions you have to make as we get into like the middle of September. So that's why we're going to continue to kind of go through this as the weeks go on and try to give you some hitters, some pitchers that you can continue to attack when the schedules work. And James, maybe, we'll put together a little article up on NBC Sports and give people some ideas of where they can go.
Yeah, totally. Or even just here's the list of every single pitcher pitching against the White Sox for the rest of the season, because there's no reason not to stream against this team every single night, especially if you need a win because they lose every game.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that before. Do you know who's coming up this weekend at least or early next week?
We have my guy Kyler Montero, and I think your guy Sam is going to pitch for the Tigers on Sunday or Monday against them. Cody Bradford, Andrew Heaney. There's a Thursday game that looks like it against the Rangers that looks like could be where Scherzer slots. And then there's a Mets series where the projected stars are David Peterson, Jose Quintana, Sean Manaea, three lanky lefties, and then an Orioles rotation that there's probably a few of those guys on the waiver wire. There's always opportunity to start against the White Sox.
Boom, boom, boom. Make sure you check it out, guys. Make sure you check out James's tweets, his work. He's over on Twitter at James_Schiano. You can check out my work on NBC Sports and also on my Twitter account, which is at SamskiNYC. You can check out both James and I together Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time on the NBC Sports YouTube channel for the Rotoworld Fantasy Baseball Q&A. And we'll be back here next week for more talk on the Rotoworld Baseball Show. So enjoy your weekend of baseball, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.